Hello everyone and welcome to Mission Maker's Vlog. Today's episode is called Setting the Scene. Now, immersion is a big factor into how some people enjoy Arma and how much people can enjoy missions occasionally. And while this may not be true for everyone, it's good to account for the people that do really need immersion to have a full experience that they want. One of the ways you can try and create a more immersive environment is to detail an area in a specific way that it looks like it makes sense in the context of the mission. For example, if you were to be setting up, say, a captured pilot, then you would want to set up a scenario where maybe they, hurt, probably tied up, maybe have the enemy, if they are either a militia or terrorist force, maybe setting up cameras and preparing an execution as an example. Or if they're a traditional military force, you would want to set up a sort of prison-like scenario where they may be with other prisoners. It's important to think through the environment that the players will be fighting in. You want them to be able to notice things and be more intuitive with their observations, be able to make conclusions about things they've seen, and more importantly, the only way you're going to be able to do that is by adding small details and objects around that weren't there on the default map. Now, obviously this can take up a lot of time, and in some cases isn't possible with MCC unless it's after the mission has already been loaded. So a tip to people who use MCC saving and loading functions, it's a good idea to save small objects like furniture and things on top of tables until after the mission's been loaded, because when using the load function on MCC, it doesn't instantly go to the position that it was designed to when you saved it. Sometimes objects may collide and fly around the place before their physics are disabled, or whether or not they actually end up getting in the right spot in the first place. Sometimes they might clip through walls if they are inside of a building or so on. So try to avoid doing this type of detailing when saving the mission. You want to do it after it's been loaded and maybe spend an hour or so before people play it, just setting it up on the server so that they can actually see what you're trying to represent. Now, I digress. Back to what I was saying. Furnishing buildings and putting objects on tables are an interesting way of providing some sort of narrative or, like I said, making players feel smart by being able to draw conclusions from the environment they've been seeing. So while it's important for them to draw conclusions, you don't want to have them thinking that because it's on the default map that it's actually irrelevant to the mission, which may not be true at all. It's a bit difficult with players who have a lot of playtime because you can't really use the default map features for any sort of context. You really do need to create your own objects, your own furnishing, and things that wouldn't normally be found inside of buildings in order to create an environment that they feel is not only in a position to be observed and made sense from, but also has enough detail that they are able to identify maybe what type of room, what type of building it is, or what even is going on. And while setting up a narrative is a bit different from setting up a scene, the topic that we're talking about today is specifically about constructing that scene, making that scene as close to what you wanted to portray as possible. So, a few ways you can do that is through setting up furniture or things on tables, using interactable intel, having specific types of units in specific positions, whether it be guards out the front door or engineers in a workshop, things like that. You want to set up a scene in Arma like you set it up in a movie. You want your props and objects around the place, you want a lot of things to be noticed, or you also want a lot of detail and you want it to be well thought out. You want a reason for every single object you place down, not just randomly placing things around because it makes it look more cluttered or lived in. You want to really think about every object and what its purpose is, how someone may be using it, or what someone might be doing with it, or has done with it. All these things are what you want to consider when building your environment and placing down objects. For example, let's go back to the heli pilot captured scene that I had created, and I believe at some point in this video we're going to be showing. You want to have a reason for everything you place down, so for example, you have a laptop that is recording from the camera object, and then you also have a television that they will be previewing their broadcast on. Then you also want to put down some small props like maybe screwdrivers for the camera tripod, put down some HDMI cable to go from the laptop to the TV. You want to set up a small wooden wall for the pilot to be framed on when he's captured. You also want to bloody up the pilot a bit so he looks like he's been abused since he has been captured after all. And after that, you want to set up a guy who's practicing his pose for the execution. And really that sets up the scene and allows people to not only feel more of a sense of urgency, but when they walk in, they can really draw a conclusion as to what the heck was going on. Another part of setting the scene, which is a bit different from setting up a specific area that infantry may walk through, is making the environment feel more alive. If you want civilian cars driving on the roads, or maybe even just military transports driving on the road, occasionally having support trucks like fuel trucks and ammo and medical driving back and forth along the roads past the players. Sort of give them a sense of being relaxed, especially inside of a friendly environment where they're maybe just leaving base and they have a good 4 kilometers to go before they're even in any sort of hostile area. You give them not only a sense of they're not alone, but you give them a sense of being relaxed. You know, they're able to not be as on edge, and sort of teach them from the ground up that they shouldn't be considering everything as a hostile, that, you know, you as a mission maker are defining these other AI units as possible friendlies, and also making sure they know where they stand in the whole player-Zeus relationship. Also might be a good idea to have just ambient helicopters, maybe dropping off cargo, or letting off infantry, loading up infantry, flying over, all sorts of stuff. Obviously, it can change mission per mission. It doesn't always have to be the same. There are cases where you may not want to have friendlies driving around on the roads. Maybe there's a specific reason, like IEDs, that they aren't allowed to have any other friendlies on the roads. You also want to be able to create a scene where you, as the mission maker, are able to take many roles. Obviously, command is a huge role that mission makers should always be taking and always have contact with, unless it's a super stealthy radio silence op. But besides the command role, it's also important to be able to take on the role of, say, a prisoner. You want to make the AI feel as human as possible, and in order to do that, oftentimes you'll have to take control of them and basically create a character simply through verbal contact with, let's say, in the example of the pilot again, since that seems to be a theme we're rolling on, pretend to be sick, beat up, injured, and also very disgruntled about the situation. That's all I have time for this episode. Thank you for watching and listening. I'd like to thank Bohemia Interactive for featuring us in their SITREP 119. I'm truly honored, honestly. I didn't even expect it. I didn't even think it would be a possibility, but sure happened out of nowhere. So thank you very much, Bohemia, and keep up the good work. You're making a great game, and you're making, honestly, the best damn military simulator out there right now. So keep up the great work, guys. Loved what you're doing. And if you're not part of it already, be sure to check out Strategic Gaming. We play Arma a lot. And I'll see you guys next time.